I'm Adam Jennings, and this is Awaiting Approval, a podcast about the messy human side of creative leadership. Today, I'm joined by Rashmi Lopez, founder of Rashmi Lopez LLC, and an experienced creative director with 15 years in the industry under her belt, for a relaxed, two-way conversation about her journey, the lessons she's learned, and what it's taken to lead with creativity and honesty. Rashmi, hi, welcome to the show.
Hi, Adam. Thank you so much for having me.
I'd love to kick us off really, really easily to start with before we go into the kind of deeper questions. So if we were meeting in person today to record this, where would you suggest we meet and what would you order to drink?
Man, I like that you assumed that it was definitely going to be a coffee shop. I guess, there's a wonderful coffee shop nearby me in Long Beach, California, called Pas de Quoi. And probably one of my favorite spaces here. It's big, it's beautiful, it's bright. There's like little beautiful nooks and crannies in there. Like it's very Creole and Cajun kind of flavor to it. So all of the menu is kind of themed that way. The owners and everybody there, they're wonderful people. They're so nice. And my favorite drink there is this it's like an apple chai latte. It's so good. And I would get it with oat milk, and I would recommend the same to you. But yeah, they have pastries. It's beautiful there. So I'd probably meet you there. I think we'd have a lot to discuss about that space.
That sounds beautiful. And I love that choice of drink. So I will definitely join you in that and metaphorically raise a glass to cheer you on for this recording.
Yeah.
So, like I said, a few kind of easy questions to start us off with. When was the last time you used pen and paper?
Just like yesterday. I think pen and paper is my preferred use of creativity. It's just faster. I think it gets everything in here, like this mess, onto a page faster. It's just better. I'm old school. I don't know if you've experienced sometimes, like some of the teams I lead, they're maybe a little bit newer to the game, and they're also great with their digital tools. And I feel but I'm just an analog person first. I do analog first and then I digitize it. How about you?
I'm with you 100%. And I often suggest to people, especially if they're overwhelmed and they're trying to figure something out, write it out, because there's something about that physical activity. It's a bit like saying it out loud, right? There's something about that really releases it from storing it up here. I mean, having said that, like many people have what looks like a crazed otter has gone wild in my iNotes on my phone because there are all sorts of drafts of things from all sorts of times of the day that probably make no sense at all, even to me who wrote them. But yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. Pen and paper all the way.
I mean, it's interesting. Now that you say like your crazed otter sketchbook, I've been, in the past, and I feel like I'm not alone in this, is in the past, I've had like my pretty sketchbooks for okay, I need to make sure that everything that goes in here is like beautiful and pretty and whatever. Then I have my shit notebooks where it's just things are ripped and whatever. And a practice that I'm trying to do right now, and this was actually gifted to me from somebody on Threads, is, all sketchbooks should be your shit sketchbooks. Because that's where your creativity comes from. It really comes from the ability to be messy, the things that you do for yourself that when you think that nobody's going to see it and nobody's going to look, that's really where the wellspring is. And I've been noticing a real big difference. So I'm not sure if that's your experience, but it sounds like the crazed otter within you is...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I've been guilty of having multiple notebooks and having them for specific reasons, and being very specific like you about, well, this has to be in that book and it has to be a certain way. And I remember getting really upset because I wanted to go and sketch. I had a real need to go outside and sketch something just to really sort of find the calm in that and balance in that. I couldn't find my sketchbook. And my partner was like, just get a piece of paper. Just it doesn't matter what it's on. You're not doing this to amass a great volume of sketches. You're doing this for a completely different reason. And that was a huge lesson to learn. It's just like, yeah, there are all these things these rules that we hold on to that actually, like, they don't really mean anything. And if we can untangle ourselves from them, free ourselves from them, then what an easier life we have, right?
It's true. Our self-imposed rules are, I guess they're there to keep us safe for things that have happened in the past, but in the end, sometimes they end up being a cage, especially with creativity. This is kind of bringing up like this core memory that I have where, I was growing up and my mom's a doctor but she's a very creative person. She's always thinking, always like ruminating on things, creatively speaking. And I would I'd be walking around the house and I'd find just like these little ripped up like notes to herself. And they'd mean nothing to me. Like they would just be in her handwriting and just like a scribble here and there. And just like literally just like the corner of a page just ripped up. And she just would write everywhere. And like there's a process there that I didn't appreciate at the time. But this is really bringing that up within me right now.
I get it completely in terms of we all have our own process and we all approach similar tasks in very different ways sometimes. I also kind of love the idea of a doctor leaving notes because, like, I think this is an international thing. Like, their handwriting is awful. Right?
Yes.
So I saw a fantastic sign and I'm sure it was probably not real. It was like a sort of a demonstration march for probably better funding for, in the UK, it would be the National Health Service, but something like that. And there was one sign that was just completely illegible, which I thought was fantastic. I thought that was such a great idea. Talking of going back to the past, it's kind of a nice segue. You're currently working and steaming away with the teams that you're leading right now, but I would love to go right back, way back to the start of your career. If you could just give us a bullet point history from where you started out into the industry to where you first got a creative director position, and then from that position to where you are today.
I feel like I'll try to give bullet points, but this is, I think, like the way it maps in my head is less bullet points and more like those scrap notes that my mom left. It just feels like a random, weird sort of whirlwind of experience, but I'll try. So yeah, I started my career. I did a traditional like going to art school type of thing. Although I started in university as an English major, went to UC Irvine out here and just felt so floaty. It felt wrong in a lot of ways. It didn't feel like a path that gave me direction in terms of like what I was going to do. And that's a big reason I was even looking around for something else. And I found art school. I went to the now defunct Art Institutes of California, but my time there was awesome. It was very community based. The classes were very small. And that's where I really found just my passion for design. I actually went to school there. My degree is in marketing, but we were surrounded by art directors, all the students around me there were people in game art and design. There were people in culinary, where actually I met my husband. He was a culinary major, but everybody was so creatively focused and it felt like home. So starting from school, I graduated within a couple of years. And it was an interesting time in the United States. So this was in 2007. So I got my first internship with IGN Entertainment, and that was a lot of fun. But as soon as I kind of graduated and exited my internship, it was now entering 2008, 2009, which we all kind of know was just the other time where we were experiencing a lot of layoffs and economic turmoil. So I did get a job as a junior designer at kind of this small game, sort of like a GameStop. It was like a franchise game store, and I would do all their graphics, their little boxes. It was very cool. I learned a lot of different things. I feel like back then our designers were so multidisciplined. Like you weren't ever you didn't ever stop learning. Like as soon as you found something that you were good at, there was another technology or something else that, became the new hotness. So I was learning motion graphics. I was learning all of these things that were new. Back then, web design was far more rudimentary than it was before. And I don't think user experience was even really well known as a profession. So yeah, that's where I kind of got my start. I got laid off because it was, again, 2009, I think we were all in that situation. Landed myself after that, after a long job search at a beauty place. So it was like kind of this mom and pop warehouse situation, family run, really cool entrepreneurial environment. And I was there all things design sort of person. So I was their sole founding designer and then left that within 2 years. I just kind of felt like we were kind of getting a little bit better in terms of economics. So I was able to find a job and moved to LA, where I am now, and found a really great home with LA Weekly and the company that owns LA Weekly, which is an alternative newspaper in Los Angeles. I was there for a very long time, and I was mentored by my boss. His name's Derek Rainey. I believe he's still the creative director there for LA Weekly. And that was, I feel like, the time period where it's like the turning point in my career, where Derek introduced me to user experience. I had no idea what that meant. I just thought, I approached things very marketing, like let's drive user behavior. And he introduced this concept to me, which was let's actually help the user do what they need to do. And that from that point on, I was kind of very intrigued by this whole thing. I also was highly influenced by the aesthetic of the alternative newspaper, very bold, very like punk, street art, just like the name says, it's alternative. So, that's just kind of where I feel like my formative time was. Unfortunately, got laid off from there because publishing, as it were, I'm not going to say it's dying because media is still a big thing. It's just that the paper form of that was a little bit difficult, a difficult time for the newspaper. That was when I kind of started getting more into tech because I was so into user experience. I developed this as a skill. I was keeping developing as a skill. And I have to say that I don't feel like I'm still an amazing user experience. I'm like not this amazing user experience designer, but I see it as a very important skill for designers to have. And the industry was going that way. So I made my way into GoDaddy with their subsidiary Media Temple, which was a really fun time. That's where things really took off in terms of like having a team. I was always a sole designer before that. And with Media Temple, I actually joined a creative team full of just like amazing creatives. And that's the point where you never really understand what community means to a creative until you experience it. And at that point, I was hooked. I was like, I need to be on a creative team forever. Because I made these people, I made friends with these people. I still talk to my team members from Media Temple, and shout out to them. They are just some of the most amazing creatives I've ever worked with. I actually, from that job on, we all kind of got laid off at the same time, unfortunately, at GoDaddy, but we all kind of, a couple of us actually ended up at the same role for my following role, which was at a sports company. So you can kind of see like all the industries that I'm going through. I'm going through video games to beauty to publishing to just this tech kind of thing, and then into sports tech, which was like sports betting, which was completely new to me as an American at that point. And then, the trend follows. Our office got all let go at the same time. So you can kind of hear a theme here. Like I've been through a lot of layoffs in my career. And what's interesting is I've always ended up on top. I've always ended up in a better situation. After Genius Sports, which was the sports company, I ended up at my latest role, which was as creative director at Carev. So I didn't mention all of my roles, but I was at that point, very long a senior. So I was a senior from like my time at LA Weekly, basically through Genius Sports, and always kind of like on the cusp of that. Like I was leading teams at that point, but not as a manager. Carev needed their founding designer. And that's where I came in. They kind of saw my experience, they saw my aesthetic. They also just kind of like, we just kind of vibed as people. I met Faya Spirit, she was the head of marketing at that point. And I feel like that relationship really just solidified things. You know, I did go through the whole, they didn't have like a crazy drawn out interview process, but I feel like vibing as people really helped my situation at that point. Plus the experience that I had and the scrappiness that I had. And they just, it was the first time that somebody just kind of trusted me as like, you know, from a point of view of a founding designer, because I had been a founding designer before, just not one who would eventually hire people. So that's where I kind of ended up as a creative director. And I was there because I had both the experience in building products and digital products, as well as building a brand from all of these different experiences that I'd had. So this last one was healthcare. So you can see like the scrap pieces of paper everywhere, like the non-linear progression throughout the industries. So yeah, I don't think that was a bullet point list, but and I know that I rambled, so you know,
No,
that's my background.
It was amazing, and I completely get the analogy of the paper notes. You know, the sort of scrapbook montage, and it's very similar to mine as well. You know, where I've gone through pretty much every creative discipline, agency and client side, pretty much all, you know, all, well, not all industries, but very many different industries, like from gaming through to entertainment to telco to, you know. So I completely know what you mean, and I love that path. I wouldn't go back and change that, because that breadth of experience has really helped me be able to understand, and I'm sure the same for you. Like, you get a problem, you get a brief land in front of you, and there's so much that you can pull on, you can draw on to really find a connection with that brief and then work well to get whatever the solution might be. Hi. If what you're hearing is resonating with you where you are in your leadership journey right now, stay tuned until the end. I'll share details on how you can work directly with me to level up your creative leadership. And I also, I absolutely adored Media Temple. They were like, the customer service from them was always like, if the best hosting company in the world were here, Media Temple were always here. Always. Always enjoyed working with them. Worked with them on massive movie campaigns, so they were really on top of their game for making sure that nothing keeled over when there was a spike in traffic. And I was always the one that would call them up and say, "No, I don't quite know what I'm doing with this technically." And they'd say, "Well, we're not really meant to help you, but if you just try this and do this and move that and click this, it'll work." So I absolutely, you know, for anyone from Media Temple that is listening or watching, like, thank you. You were always awesome and always went above and beyond. When you think of that path, the sort of stepping stones from each scrap note to scrap note, and I don't mean that in any kind of derogatory way, I just love your analogy, that kind of visual path. When you think about all of those places that you've worked at, what one place would you go back to yourself at that place, at that time, knowing what you know now? What would you say to yourself when you go back there?
Oh my gosh. I would go back to Media Temple. Like I said, Media Temple was a place where I really felt at home. I really felt like we were doing something that, you know, just from what you said, there's a feeling you get when you work with people and a company that really cares about and gets to know their target market inside out. And that was Media Temple right there. And it was very much a company of creatives for creatives. And I would tell myself, if I were, let's see, that's a really good question. If I were to go back and tell myself something, I would probably reinforce that this is the feeling that, you know, if this is the way you're feeling now, like, just chase the feeling, chase the community. Don't chase the money. Don't chase, you know, what you think other people will see as like more important, because I feel like a lot of my career, because I was still very young at that point, you know, and UX was like such a beautifully idealistic thing back then. Like, people, even now people talk about it like it's just like, and it is, it's like the ideals of user experience design, and that skill set is really important. However, I feel like I chased it for the wrong reasons. I feel like from Media Temple on, like I kind of got swept up in this tech, like shiny, like we're gonna like just change the world sort of thing. But what actually changes the world is people. It's not the tech that changes the world, right? It's the people we work with. It's our communities. It's how we feel about ourselves in the moment, like what our purposes are. Like I feel like if I were to tell myself back then, like to really go in deep into like what I think my purpose is as a creative and as a human, I think I might have reached where I am now quicker, but the journey was worth it, I would say. It's not that I'm regretting it. It's just that, maybe it would have been a little bit easier.
I love that. Do you think that learning, I've talked obviously a lot in the past about sort of design leadership, and I think we're both very aligned on the approach that I take, which is human to human leadership. Mm-hmm. Do you think that feeling for you, that approach for you, has come from that being the very core of UX, understanding human behavior, wanting to understand what's happening? Or do you think the reason why you were drawn to UX was because that was in you already?
That's a great question. I do feel like it was in me already. Going back to, I didn't mention this during my my long tirade about my experience, but one of the things that drew me to design in the first place is, I was kind of I was at UCI and I was just kind of searching. I'm like, I'm just not feeling this, and I don't know why. What is it that I want? And, back then it was not Netflix, it was all YouTube, and, trying to find, asking people what they think. I found a YouTube video, and it was a 4-part documentary. So it was it wasn't like just a short clip. It was like 4 hours worth of content here. It was called The Century of the Self, and it was all about the lead up from, human psychology, like talking about how, like Freud, and like basically the path from our modern psychology all the way up to modern day PR and public relations and marketing, and how that influences human behavior. And that part of me was really like, wow, this is, and they gave examples like, how they marketed cigarettes like a phallus, like how it like really drove people to smoke, and then the smoking sales. But I thought to myself, if marketing can do that, it can also do good. And that's why I got into design. I said, I do, like, I've always been very creatively inclined, just like my mom. And I felt very strongly that that's something that I could use towards that greater good. So I do feel like, the roundabout answer to your question is that, yeah, I felt like that was always my objective. It just, I was looking for a tool to do so. Like, what is the best way to get there? And at the time, user experience was absolutely it. It was, there were ideals there. There was a community there of people who shared that same drive to help other people and to do good and to make things better.
Yeah. And it's such a powerful mission to have that drives you through everything. Yeah. And there was another question I wanted to ask, but actually I'm connecting something in that. So I'm wondering if there's been, as you've been talking through that bullet point list of your career, there were a hell of a lot of times where you had to face a layoff, which is an incredibly tough thing to have to go through. And obviously, we can't ignore the fact that right now the creative industry is incredibly tough, probably the toughest I've ever seen in about 30 years. So that strive, that mission to do good, to use design or creativity for the purpose of bettering people or humanity or overcoming a challenge in order to create a positive human impact. Was that part of what got you through each of those periods where that happened? Or was there something sort of deeper driving you through? I mean, that's pretty deep already, but you know what I mean?
Well, in addition to the need for money, I really do think that was a big driver. It's always been a big driver for me. it's interesting. We don't always know why we do the things we do, until like, I think very recently I've been, working very hard in therapy, trying to understand myself and my environment and everything. And just going back and realizing how big a drive that was to like, no, I really want to make an impact somehow. I don't know how it's going to look. And sometimes it just looks like, sometimes our jobs just look like, doing digital ads that, creepily follow people around. Maybe our job is just to make a design system that looks pretty, that works well, that nobody knows is happening behind the scenes. But if it's making a difference somehow in somebody's life, that's something that I have always wanted. I do think that purpose really drove me through. Now that I've kind of like put words onto it, I've looked back at everything that's happened with me, and I actually I can see it as I was driven by my community. Like I said, that taste of like creative community that I got at Media Temple and then got through ever since. That was something I wanted to not only have for myself, but also like provide to other creatives, like all of the junior designers and earlier career designers that I encountered. Like sometimes I would hear the loneliness and like, wow, I just don't know how to work through this problem. And just to know that that's something that a group could provide, with our minds melded, or even just like talking through like this, just, what's going on? Why are we doing what we're doing? It's a really big motivator. So yeah, I don't know if that actually answered the question, but it's definitely where my brain's at right now.
Absolutely. And I think it's very clear from how you're talking about it. And looking at you, there's much bigger smiles when you're talking about the purpose. You're a smiley person anyway, but like when you talk about the purpose and that mission and that's what drove you through, it's very clear that that's an incredibly important, a sort of fundamental core to you as a creative. So I'm wondering then, you have that in your core. Do you also feel, and that path that you've had where you've had all of these experiences from all these different angles coming in, where has the marketing degree played into your design career? Where has that been really beneficial for you?
It's interesting because it shows up in the weirdest places. Right now, for example, I've returned back into mostly branding and brand design, marketing design. So that of course does play a part. But, I think the marketing aspect gave me the layer I needed to see a business perspective on top of like, when you're looking at like solving a problem, right? There's always multiple perspectives that we need to look at. And, sometimes we get a little lopsided when we're like, well, it's the user, right? But then, nowadays we're facing a lot of design thought leader voices out there that are like, well, we have to understand the business. But we tend to lose sight of the other side. Marketing has always been a very interesting balance for me. Like it's a balancing sort of perspective because we're looking at both at the same time. We want to create a win-win situation in marketing, right? Like I like to think of this in terms of game theory. So like you're familiar with the prisoner's dilemma. Are you? Yeah, I figured you were. So I guess for listeners, the prisoner's dilemma is like in game theory is like one party, their parties are separated. They can't see what's behind the curtain sort of. And they're given the option of like, rat the other person out. Like if there's like a crime that they've committed, rat the other person out to the cops and get a slightly lower sentence or get their punishment is going to be softer. Don't say anything. And then maybe they'll get in trouble. But so there's always it is a symbiotic relationship without actually being like seen by the other two people. But the most logical solution there is that both of them keep their mouths shut and not say anything, because at that point, what do the cops have to, right? So that's actually a win-win situation for both of those parties. And marketing, I see, has always been very much, let's win-win. Let's create, a really deep experience. Like, let's have it enjoyable for our users. Let's make their lives richer. And let's do it, like, let's make money from it. That'd be great, right? That's like the win-win situation. So that's how marketing has influenced pretty much wherever I go, is for is like, hey, how do we create a win-win from what we're doing here? Like, it's not just about the business. It's just not just about the user. It's not just about me, because I'm also making money out of this. Let's all find a win-win together.
I love that. And I think that's you talk about balance is the perfect thing for me, because a lot of creatives feel like the money aspect or the business aspect is a dirty word, and they shy away from it. There's nothing wrong with creating art for the sake of expression. There's nothing wrong with the act of creation. It's a beautiful thing, and it's something that we all have the ability to do in many different ways, even if it's just with our voice to sing or to hum or to tap something with our fingers on the table. There's nothing wrong with that at all. When you look at a designer's job in the world of business, there are certain guardrails that we have to work within, and there are certain realities that we have to achieve in order to fund whatever it is we want to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think anyone goes to a movie, for example, the latest Mission Impossible or what have you. Mm-hmm. I don't think their enjoyment of that movie is spoiled because at some point Tom Cruise will hold a Coca-Cola can and the logo will be really prominent, right?
Right.
But the reality is that Coca-Cola can being really prominent is what's paid for a big set piece or a big stunt or some of the marketing or whatever it might be. Exactly. And without that, it doesn't happen. Whether that whole system is right or wrong is an entirely different podcast. But the act of understanding, okay, the reality is I need to achieve this for the business, this for the user, and this for me, for the creative expression. That's that balancing act that you're talking of. And I think it's so important. And I think it's obviously, this is the first season of this show. And so I'm only a few recordings in, but I know from the conversations that I'm having and conversations that I've had with creatives over the years, those that have stayed the distance are the ones that understand how to align and find that balance across those three things. I also love the fact that you're straight away, how does marketing come into this? Well, these two criminals. I love the link between that. But we won't dwell on that.
I love crime. I'm just kidding.
There you go. That's the promo picture for this episode.
Just show my mugshot.
Yeah, exactly. When you look at everything that you've created over the years, what's the one piece of work that you're most proud of?
Gosh, I'm always stumped by this. Like, what's so interesting, Adam, is, when we're creating our portfolios and whatever, it's like, I look back at my work and I think, again, I'm not alone in this. I'm so critical of everything that I've done. And even nowadays, it's like, well, it doesn't mean anything unless it's created impact, right? Which is a concept that I'm trying to get away from, because impact looks different. It doesn't have to be in revenue. It doesn't have to be in numbers. It could be a feeling, right? I'll talk in terms of like what's been impactful to me, like what makes me proud of the things that I've done. And actually, one of the things that I did very recently, and this is after my time at CareRev, now I'm kind of just freelancing. I'm working with a couple of clients. I have a retainer with a healthcare medical device company. So they're kind of this health tech startup situation. They're seed. They haven't even gone to market yet, so I'm not going to release any information yet, but one of my favorite things that I did for them was taking this concept of purpose. I'm also a workshop facilitator. I do a brand workshop, and one of the things they asked me for, and they asked me, very innocently, they said, what, I think we're coming out with this these apps to go along with our device. So that it's a medical device that reads vitals. And they asked me to brand the app, which in their mind just meant, can you just make this thing pretty, enough to please the investors and make sure that it doesn't just look like an engineer made it, which at the time it did. So I dug in and I asked, and I kind of like, what do you mean by branding? Like, do we have a brand? Like, if we don't have a brand, I can't brand it. That's kind of the rub there. When we dug really in, their story is just so amazing. It comes from such heart and such depth. It's run by a family, and the device was invented by their dad, and unfortunately he passed away before he could see this product made. And they kind of made this vow, like, we're gonna bring this to market and this is gonna save lives. And I thought to myself, there's a purpose here. There's a purpose that could be like baked into the brand from the beginning. And then of course I would be able to take care of my tasks. So my favorite project is having facilitated this brand workshop for them. I took all of the people in the company, which was like, 10 people, and most of them were engineers, and put them in a room together, including the leadership there. And they all went through this beautiful process of really discovering and identifying what exactly their purpose was, how that translated into their vision, their mission, their company values, how they operated, all the way up to their positioning statements. How are we going to position these products? And it really led me into a really beautiful visual identity for them. Still kind of working out the kinks now, but just being in the room with them as they found their aha moment, I think was a very proud moment for me. So I would say that's my favorite one. And if you ask me what the impact is, I don't know yet. Like, that's gonna happen soon, I'm sure, and I believe in them, but it's definitely a point of pride for me.
How exciting is that though? Like you have that pride in that work, and there's already, like you say, baked into the core of it, there's that purpose. So now it's just time to sit back and wait and see the impact that it's going to have. It's brilliant.
It's great.
I'd love to flip that, and I promise I will flip back after, but I'd love to flip that. And if you want to share, what's been something that you might describe as your biggest mistake, and what did you learn from that?
Oh my gosh, let me think about this a little bit. My mistake. I'm trying my hardest, and this is hard. This is a hard thing to do, is trying my hardest to see my mistakes not as failures, but as you said, learning experiences. Let's see. So during my time as a leader in management, and mind you, this was not my first time in management. I've made plenty of mistakes in management, but this is my first time at CareEv as a design manager. And mind you, there were a lot of circumstances that, that just gave me a lack of resources around the bat. We ran very lean at CareEv, and it was a startup, so this is nothing new. One of the biggest mistakes I think I made was really not saying no enough as a leader. I said no for my team all the time, but I never said no for me. I always kind of decided to keep the stiff upper lip, to just like roll with the punches. I would always tell my team that mental health is a priority for all of them. And I'm not sure that I necessarily took my own advice at that company. Not always. Sometimes I did and sometimes I didn't. So there were some wins there, but there were also some mistakes that I made. I guess towards year 2.5 to 3, it started to really show, not taking enough time off, not going to bat for myself as a manager. Like, there were times when I was given headcount and hey, hire more people, when I knew that I'd still be the only manager to be managing all those people. So by the end of my time at CareEv, I was actually managing 12 people under me, and the leaders listening will know that, usually you want to stay under 6 or 7. 6 or 7 is probably your limit. So I was way over that limit and just kept rolling with it. Just kept trying to perform, kept trying to do my best. In my mind, I was trying to model for the rest of my team. But sometimes showing strength is not the best model for people. Sometimes it's, hey, I need help. Sometimes you model, I need help. Sometimes you model, no. Sometimes you model, I'm advocating for myself, and that means I need to take a step back here. So that was a mistake. And of course, what I learned from it was this is the pathway to burnout. So I would not recommend learning this way because burnout is a very serious, serious issue. And there were a lot of things going on in my life that didn't help too, that were aside from work. But that's a mistake that I will not make lightly again. But I think it really helped me learn the implications of not paying attention to those things.
It's really powerful, and it's so easy as a leader, especially when you're really trying hard to do your best and to take in all of those good influences that we all know of and really try and model the best behavior, to then completely forget yourself in that and to think of your team and how do I protect the team and how do I say no for them. It's put the mask on yourself before you help other people put the mask on.
Exactly.
It's that kind of thing. I promised you I would flip it back. So in that regard, what is the thing outside of work that you're most proud of?
Oh my gosh. It's so funny. This is talking about things I'm proud of is so hard for me. But I am so proud of the life that I've created. Within the last year and a half, I have completely changed everything about my life. So obviously I'm so proud of my marriage. My partner is my number one, best friend, everything. So I'm always going to say that that's the best thing I've ever done is choose him. And I'm going to keep choosing him. But the life that we created together prior to the last couple of years it was great, but I completely changed it. I bought a new house. I moved to a completely different city. I got laid off right when our house closed, which was very scary, and it was not easy. We also chosen to adopt a puppy before the layoff as well. And, the house that I bought was significantly more expensive than my condo. So I've completely changed the way I see work. I've completely changed the way I've lived, my routine, just everything in the last year and a half. I am really proud of. I've been through fire and I've come out the other side, and it's not an easy thing to do, to change everything about your life in one go, right? Usually you kind of want to do it gradually, but in my case I was kind of forced off the ledge. But I am proud that I made it this far and that I'm talking to you right now. So I hope that I hope that answers your question.
It's a wonderful answer, and congratulations.
Thank
It's
you.
a huge achievement. And it leads me really nicely into the next question, which is, what do you see the future for you, for the industry, for those entering the industry? What do you see happening right now? Where do you think everything is going?
I love this question because it's so hopeful, and I really do have hope for the future of our industry. The time we're living in is so fascinating to me. This is not like 2008, 2009 when the last time I really experienced this level of change was then, and it's way more than what's happening. The AI technology is taking off, and there's a lot of debate about that online and the implications of that. There's also all of the what's happening in tech, as a tech industry, which is where a great number of creatives thrive at the moment because of user experience. I feel like user experience design has become this gargantuan, dominating kind of discipline within the design community lately. And we're really having this kind of interesting identity crisis. I don't know if I would call it a crisis so much as a renaissance, because that's what I kind of feel like is happening. We're kind of in this turmoil. Nobody, I know more people who don't have a job as a creative than do at the moment, which is very different. We're all trying to figure out what we're going to do next with our life. What are we going to do with this creative energy and this experience that we've all built up? And how are we going to use what is given to us in the future. Like, and are we going to use it? Are we going to use AI? Are we going to use whatever new hot software is going to come out, you know? So personally, for me, I've recognized that going back into the basics of creativity, like what makes a person creative, kind of going, you know, really sitting in my analog tendencies has really helped me kind of separate myself and then see like, hey, like as soon as people figure out for them what their purpose is going to be, I feel like we're going to start to accelerate a lot quicker because people are no longer like, I feel like creativity is going to like this new level is going to be unlocked. I don't know what that's going to be. I don't know what that looks like. But I'm very hopeful because for me, I've been thriving. Yeah, I'm you know, wondering where my next paycheck's gonna come from sometimes, like a lot of people out there. But I'm also finding myself as a creative and as a human being, as a member of community, as a member of society. So I'm very hopeful about things, and I hope that gives other people hope too, because I know that there's a lot of despair happening right now. And I've been there. So, yeah.
That's a very, very hopeful answer, and I love that. And I think it will help a lot of people. There's that adage of, you know, in an emergency, look for the people that run towards it, not the people that are running away, but the people that are running to go and help. And I think your answer is very definitely one of those people running towards the hope. In the situation that we're in, there's clearly big changes on the horizon. It's already impacting the industries. And it's not just creative industries, right? The impact is across the board. There are all sorts of potential visions of the future, but I think we're just going to have to wait and see. But I temper my anxiety about what that is with hope that, like you say, we can, if most of our life becomes automated, then what we have left to focus on is purpose and story. And those are the things really that I think make us intrinsically human.
That's right.
So I really love that. I have one final question for you.
Of course.
It's the same question that I will end every single episode and ask every single guest. Are you still awaiting approval?
Am I what?
Are you still awaiting approval?
Am I still awaiting approval? I'm always awaiting approval. I feel like there's always something that is in somebody else's court, and I'm just here, you know, twiddling my thumbs. But this is what we do, right? While we're awaiting approval, what's the next thing? What do we do while we're waiting approval from somebody else? Yeah.
And what do we do to bridge that gap?
Yes.
Rashmi, thank you so much for coming on. In true sort of almost like Hot Ones end of episode, like this is your chance to, you know, that camera, this camera, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
Like what have you got going on right now? How can people get in touch with you? Share what you would like to share.
Absolutely. So you can get in touch with me. I'm very active on Threads. I'm active on LinkedIn as well. So please, you know, connect with me. Send me a DM so that I know who you are. Or just, you know, follow me, look out for any content that I post. I promise that I'm not trying to sell you anything, unless I do try to sell you something, which is very rare. You know, you can see my portfolio. I'm actually currently in redesign mode of my portfolio. I'm rebranding myself. So this version will evolve very soon, but you can reach me at rashmibella.design. And currently I am freelancing. If you know any community people who, like you hear, like I'm so passionate about community, and this is kind of where I'm trying to kind of make an impact now is like community focused small businesses. So if you know a small business out there who could use some design help in any way, so strategically brand, anything like that. Like I said, I'm a bit of a jack of all trades here, or Jill, I don't know. And I'm willing to help. I also, I like to help small businesses win. So I am going to be offering hour-long sessions of just like pick my brain sessions for people who, maybe you're a DIYer and you are a small business and you just want a little bit of a professional's perspective on something. This is something that I love helping people with, just like talk things out. If you need something critiqued or, a strategy that you want to run by someone else, I'm perfectly willing to help you out. So just please reach out and I will absolutely help you with whatever you need. Yeah.
Rashmi, thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you, Adam. Thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome.
Thanks for listening to Awaiting Approval. If you're a creative leader or stepping into a leadership position and want support that's honest, practical, and tailored to you, I'd love for you to come and join my Supercharged Creative Leaders Program. It's a 4-week course built around 8 pre-recorded modules, 4 live sessions with me and the rest of your cohort, a private Slack space for you to ask questions and go deeper together, plus ongoing access to my alumni community once you complete the course. Each cohort is capped at just 6 people, so you'll always get personal attention, real feedback, and space to grow. And if you want to tailor the journey further, you can book extra one-to-one sessions with me, and we can dig deeper into the challenges you're facing right now. I built this program based on everything I wish I'd known when I started leading creative teams. No fluff, no jargon, just the tools, frameworks, conversation, and clarity that will actually move you forward. Spots go quickly, so if this sounds like the right fit for you, go to growwithadamjennings.com to book your place on the next cohort. Previous attendees have gone on to win major pitches, land new roles, get promoted, and step into leadership with more clarity, confidence, and purpose. You can find out more and book your place on the next cohort at growwithadamjennings.com. I can't wait to start working with you. Awaiting Approval is a Cordial Fox production, hosted by Adam Jennings, produced by Adam Jennings and Jasmine Egner.